Okay, we are on the air. I'm Doug Splinter,
I am
and
Todd Kidda.
and I'm going to cut over and said Todd live. You'll notice that there's going to be we're using traditional Teams broadcast, so we're going back to old school today, Mr. Kidda. So
Yeah, let's just say that was a fallback decision. That's all right.
it turns out when you have a fancy production studio, it actually needs wired networks to work, and the wireless networks are beautiful right now, but the wired networks hasn't been even testing them. So maintenance and physical stuff aside, we should have ourselves back on the air with fancy production quality as of next week. But at the moment, we don't. But we thought it's been a while since we've been able to do a show, and we should really do one. So right now I got Todd full screen, and then I'll send myself back full screen so I can wave at people. And now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna composite it together. I'm used to a fancier broadcast experience, and the Teams NDI thing let us compose and bring stuff together. So we've been using all these fancy features for the longest time. So Todd and I don't know, like I don't want to complain because it is super easy to do this. We reverted to this in the last 15 minutes. We're like,
Yeah.
all right, let's just roll with it. So you're on the air, your content's on the air, and let's do a little Flash Friday, shall we?
Yeah, sure. There we go. Yeah. So I hope everyone's doing well. You know, it's been a little bit. Glad to be back here with Doug. So I have a few Power BI things, a few Power Apps portals things, and then some flow things. So here we go. This one is, dude, I have seen a incredible uptick in the last couple months on people really not only adopting and bringing Power BI Premium into their environment, but really using it, right? And really figuring out how to use some of the advanced capabilities, both from the administrative side and the user side. And this is one of those. So we've talked before about how there are some AI ML features inside of Power BI Premium. One of them is to build AutoML models, meaning like you have something you want to predict. You can tell Power BI what that thing is in your data flow, and then it can attempt to build a machine learning model, let's say classification, on top of your data flow. So previously, the reusability of those AutoML models were limited to the scope of one data flow. Okay, so you had to build another entity inside of the same data flow to reuse that model. So what this is bringing is the ability to reuse that AutoML model inside the same workspace. So we've expanded it one level up, which is good. I think that I don't know what the constraints are behind the scenes, how this is architected. I would love to see this eventually even expanded beyond the workspace to maybe the whole tenant, but this is great. I spend the number one, I guess, adjective I use with customers when I'm talking to Power BI is reusability. Reusability. Lego bricks, all the analogies to talk about reusability. So this is another reusability feature here. So really good stuff. All right. Now, this is more of a quick kind of heads up. As Christopher's pointing out here, almost 2 years ago, we committed to 3 releases of Power BI Report Server a year, and we've largely hit that. What we've done this month is delayed the September release to October. Okay, so it was up in the air what we were going to do. Were we going to wait till January? Were we going to ship a month late? So we've kind of made the decision that we're going to ship a month late and then get back on the cadence. I mean, I think largely everyone can kind of understand with everything that's been going on. There's been some challenges just kind of hitting that, and we're only going to be a month behind here. So not a, I mean, and from my perspective, hopefully this isn't a huge issue for a lot of folks, but I think that
I would imagine people have had other things to keep themselves busy with.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a couple people out there that are really annoyed by this, but I think for the most part, people should be able to kind of get back on this. And like it says here at the bottom, we remain committed to the normal release cadence moving forward, and customers can look forward to the January 21 release as planned.
Awesome.
Yeah, so good stuff. This one is good, and I like the continued commitment to mature technology, right? So analysis services, multidimensional, been around for 20 years, right? There are I'd actually love to know. I don't think it's possible to really know the number of multidimensional models in the world versus the number of tabular models. That's probably an impossible thing to ever quantify, but I'd be really curious what that is. My guess is multidimensional is still a leader out there. Multidimensional models are very mature. They're very good. They run large portions of major businesses. They're out there. So I love the commitment to that technology. So what we're doing here is through a cumulative update to SQL Server 2019 analysis services multidimensional, it's a mouthful, and the latest Power BI desktop release, there's going to be some major performance enhancements, and that's thanks to SuperDAX. So I'm not going to really dig into what SuperDAX is right now, but definitely you can go out and take a look to see how that works. Because one of the great things between tabular and multidimensional from the beginning, or at least I can't remember how far this goes back, is they both kind of accept both languages, right? MDX and DAX. So there's some things that had to happen for multidimensional to receive DAX, which is what Power BI speaks. So SuperDAX has been updated. You need both the CU5 of 2019 and the Power BI desktop update, and you should be seeing some major performance enhancements. So I'm curious for those out there, if you've had any challenges with performance, just hit me on Twitter. I'm just more curious than anything. So, all right, this has been a bit since the August release of desktop, but it's also been a bit since we've had a show. I don't think we had a show in August. So sorry about that.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
things happened, and
Yep.
so yeah. But some cool. I'm not going to go through all of these, but some cool stuff. I really like the rectangular. Oh, actually, first I'm going to cover perspectives. So perspectives are something that's been around. Speaking of analysis services, right? The maturity of that. Perspectives have been around in analysis services for a very long time. I at least can remember implementing perspectives back in like 2006 in analysis services. So they've been around. And what we're supporting now, because of all the investments we've made, and I've talked about this with the external tools like Tabular Editor, you're able to use tools like that to create perspectives. So what's a perspective, right? So let's say you have a fairly complex, and by complex I mean many tables inside of your data set, Power BI data set. You can now add a perspective to pare down the tables and fields that are viewable in that perspective. This is not a security mechanism. It is a usability mechanism, right? So let's say your model, your data set has things around inventory, in this example, has inventory and let's say sales, right? All in one data set. Well, let's say that you have a group of people that really only care about inventory and another group of people that really only care about sales. So you, the data set curator, only have to update, manage the lifecycle of one data set, but you can give a tailored view to different audiences. And now Power BI Desktop is supporting the ability to consume those perspectives. So you still need to use Tabular Editor to create your perspectives. We have that first-party support now. But now you can go in here and say, for this report, I want this report to be inventory, use the inventory perspective or whatever it is. So this is really cool. Rectangular lasso support for data points. This has been a challenge, or by challenge I mean not really possible, right? Before, to select individual data points on a line chart. So now with the rectangular lasso, you're able to do that, which is really cool. Just if you're curious, I happen to notice down here that the max number of data points you can select is 300. So just for whatever that's worth. So go ahead, Doug.
No, I have nothing. If you need more, you're in the wrong view. Just
yeah, exactly. So a bunch of new visuals. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in here that I wanted to cover. I feel like there was some new template apps for Dynamics. Oh yes, the text and CSV by example, which is really cool. So I love the by example thing. Power Query is one of the most amazing pieces of technology that we have. I think it's awesome, and making it easier for people to do self-service ETL against your data, right? So you can see here where here is my file, and here is creating things by example. and extracting the different data points. So making it really, really easy to get at like more complex files.
That tech is crazy. It makes bringing in data so much more approachable. You don't have to figure out how to write all the crazy expressions. And if you don't know how to write it, it writes the crazy expression, and you can almost use the by example to learn your way through. Oh, that's how you do it.
Yep, absolutely. Because it
so
tells.
It's great because it gives you the DAX.
It exposes the result, right?
Yeah,
so
you actually see that. No, it's not like I did it and you can't tweak it, because you can go back and go, well, you were pretty close, but I would like it to be a little different. But if you just want to get that bulk expression down, because if you don't do DAX very often, even if you've been to a class or something, like I don't know, like what was that function again? You know, right. So I think it's cool.
Yep. Yeah, because like I said, it'll show you the M that it generates, and then you can go even tweak that, add to it, say no, I don't like it, whatever. Some new connectors.
M, I was saying that, but it's M.
Yeah. Yep. That's no worries. Yeah. I'll be honest, I have no idea what any of these are. Sharewell, Automation Anywhere.
I do.
Which one do you know?
Sharewell, very, very well. So Sharewell is one of the competitors to ServiceNow.
Okay.
So extremely important from a service catalog integration on top of it. So I was extremely happy to see that one. Automation awesome. Anywhere, I admit I don't know, but Sharewell is legit. There's a chunk of people who it's one of the service desk management tools that are out there. So.
And I haven't run across Assertis. I'm assuming I'm saying that correctly too much, but it looks like for our financial folks, right? Doing planning, budgeting, forecasting, all that kind of stuff. And I've been hitting a lot of financial people lately. I mean, it makes sense, right? I think what's happening is a lot of the people that have spent their lives in Excel are kind of starting to be awakened to the possibilities inside Power BI and really liking what they're seeing.
I caught someone who was exporting stuff from Excel over to or from Power BI over to Excel, so they could look at it in different ways. And I was like, yeah, why don't we teach you a little Power BI? And they're like, this is beautiful. I'm like, there's still a reason for Excel. We know that, but
yeah,
maybe a little more discerning about it. So
yeah, Excel's and I mean the stuff that we've added inside of Excel to discover the Power BI data sets. Like I can start my day in Excel and say, I want to connect it in Power BI. I don't even have to go to Power BI. I can just start in Excel and say, what's my curated data in my enterprise?
Which goes to the point you've been saying, Power BI is a data service and visualization and business decision platform. It's not just a,
yeah. When Excel people see that, they want to cry, because it's like, I don't want to go to this other thing, right? I don't want to go. But when they can see a curated data catalog of all the stuff in their enterprise, that's pretty powerful. Yeah. So this is cool. Power Apps Portals now has an API for CUD operations, everything but the read apparently. So showing through like some posts, or I'm sorry, some creates, some updates, some deletes. So this is pretty cool. There's some sample code out here, and this is a preview function, of course, but I love the power and the capabilities that are coming to the portals piece. I mean, real kind of there's an API. You can start to do some cool stuff. So I thought that was pretty slick. All right, some updates to the UI flows. There's a delay activity. I thought this sounded familiar. I thought we may have covered this at one point, but maybe not, or maybe this went GA. But it's the ability to kind of wait, right? So if you know that you need to wait 2 seconds, usually after you hit a button, you can now implement that into your flow and model that business logic, or model that interaction logic, as it were. Command line arguments. This is a must-have, of course. It's one of those where you read it and you're like, well, how wasn't that there before? Because if you're like launching programs and running executables, I mean, a lot of these things are going to need command line arguments. And then copy paste, right? Copy paste, it works within the scope, so not across flows, but still that's pretty cool if you're going to be reusing a lot of the same steps. This one I thought was pretty cool. So because before, like let's say you run a flow to see if something's been modified in a SharePoint list. And that's been there for a while. SharePoint list was modified, run the flow, but what was modified? Was it the first name column? Was it a birthday? Like what was the thing? And if you wanted to see what was modified to vary your logic, you had to do some pretty complex stuff to figure that out. Well, now what we've added here is some Boolean columns, basically, that says, for each column, there's going to be a attribute of the action that says, has this column changed? Has the title changed? Has the price changed? So you can just do your if statements inside your flow to check to see what was changed, because maybe you only care if a certain budget column was changed or something like that. So this was a super nice add here, and I'm sure that's going to make a lot of people's flows a lot more simple, a lot less complex. And this one is super cool. This is a good last one to do because it's a handoff to you, because I think you have some Teams things that you're going to talk about. But basically, any message inside of Teams can be used for a selected message to trigger a flow. So this is kind of like in SharePoint, where you had select a list item and run a flow interactively, right, from a user. Like, I'm going to click something and make it start. Same thing with like in Excel. I can like select a row and say run this flow for this row. Well, I can basically do that now inside of Teams and say, for this message, start this flow, right? So there's some examples in here around, like, let's say, and one that I've wanted to do very often, and I actually haven't set up for myself yet, but I'm going to, is create a to-do, right? Because how often do you see like a Teams message that either you want to reference later, or you want to create an action, or I'm sorry, you have an action to do as a result of that message. So you can now do that inside of Teams. And I've used a lot of times the bookmarks function inside of Teams, which actually does work pretty well, because it's basically like, hey, I want to tag this for later, but you're still going back and like, you know, show me all my bookmarks. You're like scrolling through a pile of things that you've ever bookmarked. So this gives you another option to either save something for yourself or to create a to-do for it, or integrate, of course, with a business process. Like I saw some examples that were like, well, convert this message into a Dynamics sales lead or something like that. Really easy to do. And actually, yeah, that's what this is right here. But yeah, pretty cool. Create a DevOps work item out of it. That's another an option here. So basically, for a selected message, do something in Flow. I thought this one was great, a great add. And I think a lot of people, from even just a personal productivity perspective, will get a lot out of this. So that's all I had, Mr. Splinter. What do you? That was it. Yeah, man.
I got a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna do a little send live, kill your share. Some people are stuck looking at me, full screen. And
1985.
Yeah, a little. I got my Windows retro shirt on. I got a little SharePoint Saturday swag that I'm wearing. So it's and then of course my Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox. You know,
you are Minnesota and
I'm Minnesota and Microsoft. You know, so the on top of it, let me get my my share going here. Like I said, this is the low tech component of things that we got going on this week for production components. So we'll do a little layout shift. This is what happens when you produce your own show. It's super exciting, or you describe to people, here's what we got going on. So I am going to, hopefully that's heading out live and we're good to go on top of it.
I think it looks like it. Yep.
Awesome. So I wanted to do the roundup for August, very quick and stuff. We talked about task management coming into Teams. We talked about that back when it was at preview. So that one's kind of rolling. You talked about the Power Automate capability, so that's in the consolidated one. You can go check out in the blog post, so I won't derive more into that one. But the triggers are also interesting on top of that, where they had a couple of triggers in the back end, where like you can get triggered when someone gets added to a team and do dynamic actions based on those events. So you got a more interesting event canvas behind when things happen in Teams that are happening on top of it. They also had a whole new web page with a bunch of curated apps for Microsoft Teams. You can go click on that one later and go down. I was in with somebody who's a big mural group last week or 2 weeks ago as part of an external planning exercise. It was interesting. I hadn't really used that particular whiteboarding software before. I'm more of a Microsoft whiteboard person, right? So it was kind of interesting to go through that. But I do think people have talked before about the privacy and attestation of those third-party services, and you do have control over which ones your organization uses. And if you own MCAS, you can go assess the compliancy and attestation of those things to see if the vendor is even capable of meeting it. So there is a bunch of stuff you can do to decide about these things. But I do think you should go check them out, because your users are going to love a lot of these things. And I think you should be on top of it for what ones are going to have an impact on top of it. I love this one where you can just pin Visio directly within Teams channels now. Did you see that one where you can just smack a Visio diagram?
Yeah, that was awesome. I did see that.
I mean, they've been doing all that video for the web work and everything on top of it. So Whiteboard and Teams got a whole bunch of uplifts, including the ability to quickly add Post-it notes for brainstorming tasks and everything else. So there's some third-party Whiteboard up top and first-party stuff from us down here that are built in. So notice the little sticky note. If you are a remote participant in a meeting, maybe you don't have a pen. Maybe you're on something that isn't conducive to quote unquote sketching. So it kind of amped up that little participation factor for a whiteboard capability on top of it. I thought this was an interesting little buried stat that 60% of the time people spend on the PC is in a web browser.
I believe that.
Yeah, I do too. And that means, a little north of a third is spent over in other applications and different things. But they released a little send to OneNote functionality extension within. I'm going to use the heck out of that. I did not know that was a thing. Did you?
So this is collections. Is that what it is? Sending your collections to OneNote?
So collections now allows you to export to OneNote.
That's awesome. No, I did not know that.
And so you should pay a little time to how much you can really improve your universe by browser and collections. Like in it. I'm just going to leave it at that. Go check that functionality out.
Because at first I'm like, this could be one of these things where it's gimmicky or just like you can't work it into your daily flow.
Super useful. It's super useful. And when it says, hey, man, you might want to think about some collections. You ever notice it suggests you that? And I actually, the other thing is like desktops and Windows. I feel like I really need some sort of Windows productivity instructor to. You ever had a school teacher, one of those people who's really good at this stuff, show you like how they use it? It's very humbling.
You know who's really good at that? I'll be honest, is Scott Hanselman. He does he's kind of known in the space for like Microsoft developer. He does a lot of .NET and C#, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He's got a YouTube channel where he just does like basic like Windows usability stuff.
I found that I retreat to my initially learned habits sometimes.
Sure,
we all have been, and I love that it's been nudging me in a good way to participate.
Well, especially if you haven't checked out, I don't think we've really talked about it a lot, but like the new Power Toys project that's going on, that stuff's amazing. Right?
It is. Oh, of course. And so all right, let's keep going on top of it. So all sorts of stuff. Provision users to AD from SAP SuccessFactors. So there's also Azure AD integration, upcoming stuff. You're going to see more and more, training program integration stuff. We had those big announcements around, that we're doing for first party training with all sorts of stuff on top of it. There's a fast track assistance stuff that came into it. I don't think that's much an enterprise play where you and I have most of our customer base, but it is. So they now have a new policy setup experience for safeguarding Windows machines using the stuff we've showcased before. So some components on top of that. I think it's probably a low mid enterprise play, but it is interesting to see what recommendations those baselines come across. So if we're providing sort of a fast, this is a recommended state, I think it's a good exercise for an enterprise to compare themselves to that recommended state and see what they want to do. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
As a comparison exercise, even if you're like, I don't use wizards, Doug. We do in our environment, great. But you can learn something from these baselines. Like when they put out the security baseline recommendations for M365 that Jonathan Troll's team put out from Enterprise Cyber, like that content is highly useful as this is the recommended base state. If you're going to vary from it, you just have to know why. Okay, so let's dive in a little specifics on Teams for what's new on top of it. Obviously, there was a couple of things. I'm not going to go over to it, but the large meetings went up to 20,000. I have that in another tab somewhere around here.
Oh, wow.
So for doing that, I don't know if that's going to stay or if it's going to come down when we'll watch the trend line. Theoretically, you can do more, but you got to ask. Like we gotta know what you're doing and that you're ready for on top.
So you think that may come back down? That's interesting. Like that's a possibility in your mind.
You can get bigger meetings from us. I think they may just keep it at 20. I don't know, but it really comes down. Yeah, 20,000 live people is a lot, and I think we just want to talk to you if you want to do more. It's not a limitation of the platform, so to speak, but it certainly might be crushing your network or just at a certain point you do have to ask if you want to go beyond certain thresholds.
I'm trying to think if we certainly have more than 20,000 employees at Microsoft. Sure.
But would all of them be watching the broadcast? I mean, not everybody can make it at once.
I'd be hard pressed to guess that we've done many that are over that much.
We have. I can tell you we have.
Okay,
I don't know the number of them, but I can definitely tell you we have. It
certainly doesn't happen every day. I know that much.
No. I would say less common than But as far as totality of people who watch it once we post it, like I call it the live watch and the lazy watch. You and I get more lazy watch than live watch of our shows.
Yep.
We just do. I mean, it's a thing. And some people just take the stream of the notes and they're like, "Thanks for the curated links, guys." So I mean, you and I we provide content in a variety of ways. I think a lot of people are like that. Like, "Oh, what was the digest? Oh no, I want to go watch that part live." Or
there's got to be choice these days, right?
Yeah. Okay. So let's keep rolling. There's some recording option stuff on top of it. I thought the interesting optimization for VMware Horizon 8 was interesting. So if you're Horizon shop, that's kind of cool on top of it. We've talked through all the new devices that were everything on top of it. Real-time presence in chat. The real-time presence function just reduces the latency on that presence capability. So, if you'll recall, we sort of dialed that back a little bit in the initial days of the pandemic because we found it was materially impacting service capacity.
That one little feature,
Yeah, that one little feature was actually, a huge amount of traffic for enterprises and people, and because it was constantly, so they've got that back and dialed in bandwidth-wise on top of it. Because before the pandemic, you could cheat in some ways. I think you just didn't have these kind of scenarios, but and obviously the Visio files coming in on top of it. Incoming IP video policy as opposed to outcoming from an admin standpoint, and then the Skype for Business online connector stuff that we've talked about before. There's a Teams app submission API in the developer platform. There's graph resource specific consent capability, so edging down on the graph security. It was never very broad, but they keep tuning that to more finer grained controls for the graph security capabilities. I thought it was pretty cool. There's now the support for native mobile device camera and location capabilities in tab-oriented apps within the mobile teams.
Oh, nice.
That was kind of cool. So I can see a lot of use for that for the embedded applications, especially as the Dataflex thing moves forward and the applications under CDS and everything that we start building out. So all right. So there's on top of it, Teams for Education. Got some expanded stuff in education insights. Gov got lobby settings components, some improved Teams for auto join launcher, new policy to prevent upload of profile pictures for GCC high and DoD. So you will not be uploading your pictures, right? So so more control in the DoD cloud, I think, would be the best way to put it. All right, so there is another Office fun feature. You haven't covered Office in a while, and as we head into the fall, I think I may go back and do like one on Windows and one on Office. There's nothing new, just like what's happened in the last maybe major releases or anything else. But did you know, like we've shown dictate in Word before, right? But did you know there's now transcribe in Word for the web?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And there's a significant difference in transcription and dictation. So when you come into transcribe, right, you can go ahead and upload an audio on top of it, and it will differentiate, right, the speakers. And you got to go try this out. That's all I'm going to say. I think it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, this is a pretty interesting and kind of, I think, innovative feature. It's a little obvious, like dictate is obvious, right? This one is a little more, but I think the use cases around this could be really fascinating.
It says there's a 5-hour limit per month for uploaded recordings, and each upload recording is limited to 200 megabytes, right? And so it says it's coming for Office Mobile by the end of the year, which would be pretty cool because you can just sit there, hit the record in the meeting, right? Then you upload the transcription. But it lets you go ahead and have. Anyway, I just think this is a fascinating feature to explore and check out from I've had people want to do this before in real time, and we've attached streams and all sorts of stuff, right, using the Lewis services and everything. But this is an interesting sort of lazy implementation of it, if you will, where you get that post facto analysis on top of it. So I would say go check that one out on top of it. All right. So we had the rest of that kind of stuff. You see the Samsung announcements as well. So there were a couple of announcements on the Windows Experience blog about the Samsung.
I don't think I saw this.
All right. Well, Samsung Notes automatically sync with OneNote feed in Outlook, right?
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then Samsung reminders from Galaxy Note 20 to Windows 10 PCs across To Do, Outlook, and the Microsoft Teams experience. So anyway, you check if you're a Samsung user. Check out or you have a large Samsung population in your enterprise, go check it out. Some cool stuff happening with the Samsung partnership as well. And essentially they dropped some of their stuff and just went with our native cloud services for on top of it. I got one more from the security blog. There was some thoughtful stuff on IoT security out there, so that's not really our audience, but I just liked some of the thoughtfulness of content that's been coming out of some of our security teams. But there is one that I am particularly intrigued by, and that is that you can force firmware code to be measured and attested by secure launch on Windows 10. Now, I understand this is probably a Doug plus a niche group of people who cared more deeply about the attested boot state of firmware code. But if you have a high profile population of users, people, devices that are manufacturing control floor systems, now some of those are fully isolated from a network standpoint and everything, and they should be. But I think this is a class of service that is worth a review. And we obviously have things like the hypervisor protected code integrity. We got all, just the native features from, I call them the guards in Windows, credential guard, app guard to require signature of authoritative publishing. And if you're not going to do that, you can at least virtualize the LSAS through the credential guard, which also safeguards the cert enclaves. So there's all this capabilities on top of that. But secure launch leverages this dynamic root of trust for measurement principle, which, got to put an acronym around that, DRTM. And it's pretty cool capability on top of it. Now, depending on state, you may already be taking advantage of some of these features, but maybe you don't know about it. Maybe you're not there. And I just think this is something, if you really do care about the security and integrity of the boot process and the firmware that powers it, and you should, at least at some level, if you have a good desktop/security team, this is something that I thought it was interesting, and I think it's worth a strong read. Awesome. And that was where I wanted to capstone for it. It was kind of a little quiet. I look backwards, and the roundups are the biggest thing, right? I mean, we would have covered those announcements in a little greater depth, but I think August was a quiet month as far as product revolution. It was an evolution month, to be sure, but it was more of a month of refinements, I would say, looking backwards at it.
People are on vacation, summer, right? All that happens too, right? So
yeah, now the kids are going back to school and everything else, or not, or they're hybrid or virtual, or they're trying to go back, and
right.
And then college kids are going back and throwing parties and then getting sent home, and so we're all in the midst of all of it. Anyway, so that was my roundup for the week. A little what's new in the M365 side, what's new in Teams. Some office newness, and then Windows 10 security. And you had a ton of Power BI and cool flows and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we are at 11:02 according to the Central Time Zone, which means that's a wrap for Flash Friday. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to single screen mode, and I'll put you on stage so that you can just wave goodbye to everybody and take us out from Office Flash Friday. All right, so we'll be back on the air through YouTube next week.
Yes.
But we didn't want to not do a show because we knew how to do one easily. And I'd like to point out that in 15 minutes we created, published, got a broadcast out, and not as many of our normal audience showed up. But
well,
hey.
I was going to say, it wouldn't be an Office Flash Friday if there wasn't last minute stuff. But I think broadcasting is neither of our day jobs, right? So
fair enough. So, all right, you all have a great weekend, great and safe weekend. Hope it's a holiday weekend here in the United States. So hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll see y'all in a week.
Yep. Cheers, everybody. Take care, man.
Bye.